Chairman Arrington, Ranking Member Boyle, members of this committee, I thank you for the opportunity to speak on this important topic today. My name is Donna Jackson, and I'm the Director of Membership Development for Project 21 Black Leadership Network. We cover a wide range of issues, but our fundamental focus is lifting people out of poverty and government dependence into prosperity and self-sufficiency. Green New Deal style policies like those in the Inflation Reduction Act cost Americans twice. First, we pay billions and quite possibly trillions in tax dollars to subsidize these alternative green sources and technologies. And since green energy usually costs more, we end up with higher utility bills as well as rising prices from everything from housing to cars to food. At the same time, this agenda prevents us from getting the full benefits of the abundance of fossil fuels this nation is blessed with. Overall, green policies are a bad deal for the American people, but it is low-income households that suffer the most when energy affordability is no longer the priority. Of course, we'll hear a lot of hype about the disproportionate impacts of environmental threats and especially climate change from activists, but the reality is, for millions of struggling households, it is the disproportionate impact of environmental policy that's the real problem. I'll start with the issue of housing affordability. Home ownership is absolutely critical to breaking the cycle of poverty and creating intergenerational wealth for low-income and minority families. A recent study finds that homeowners have 40 times the net worth of renters. Yet costly environmental policies are practically tailor-made to place the goal of home ownership further out of reach at a time when prices are at a record high and so are interest rates. Most recently, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, who's tasked with helping first-time buyers and low-income buyers with mortgages, adopted new green building code requirements that would cost up to $31,000 per household, would add additional costs. At the same time, the Department of Energy and the EPA are imposing new regulations raising the cost of nearly every appliance that goes into a home. We heard a lot about government efforts to go after stoves, but there are also regulations regarding the most expensive appliances, including furnaces, air conditioners, and water heaters. And just as important as home ownership is to low-income and minority families, so is vehicle ownership. And I'm gonna tell you, on this point, the EV agenda is absolutely no friend to the working class. Affordable cars, and let's be honest, gas-powered cars are critical to climbing up the economic ladder. Being able to drive to work opens up many opportunities than being limited to only jobs accessible to public transportation. And there's countless studies that show that people that live in low-income families have to drive further to find the best economic opportunities for them to sustain their families. And in addition, having a car allows low-income families to participate in the gig market when today, in today's economy, they have to have 2 and 3 jobs to be able to sustain any kind of dignity. And even beyond jobs and economic development, cars are also indispensable for raising a family. As a single mom who raised 5 kids, 5, don't tell me that I could have done that relying on public transportation. EVs can't take the place of gas-powered cars. They have higher sticker price, limited range, the options for charging for urban people living in urban communities are limited, and it's even a question that if people getting government assistance can even own an asset that valuable. I would like to conclude by discussing the ongoing problem of energy poverty. There are various definitions of energy poverty and energy insecurity, but it all boils down to this: households are having to cut back on necessities in order to pay their energy bills. Studies show that 25% of households have to forego food and medicine to pay their energy bills, and that's substantially higher for low-income and minority families. It's mind-boggling in this country. The solution to energy poverty and the key to restoring the American dream for households struggling to achieve it is not subsidies and mandates for solar panels, EVs, and wind turbines. It is the abundant, reliable, and affordable supply of coal, oil, and natural gas right beneath our feet, and the nearly 2 million well-paying blue-collar gateway jobs the industry provides that mostly minorities take advantage of. And unlike green energy, which only succeeds when the government spends taxpayers' dollars tilting the playing field in its favor, the only thing the federal government needs to do to ensure real energy abundance and affordability is stay out of the way. Thank you.
I think, Ms. Jackson, you've been an advocate, a strong voice for working families and middle-class folk. Listening to Mr. Higgins say that the Inflation Reduction Act has done its job, which suggests that inflation has been reduced and the lives of Americans are better today than they were prior to the Inflation Reduction Act, the spending, the taxes, the regulations, and this energy policy of the Biden-Harris administration. I assume you engage and listen to middle class and working families. Do you think they would agree with Mr. Higgins? What do you think their response would be to listen to his statement, it's done its job, and my colleague and friend's statement that we should celebrate this record of energy success?
None of the people that I talk to are celebrating. In fact, I can tell you right now that most of the people that I talk to are not even living paycheck to paycheck. They're living paycheck to Wednesday, and they have to borrow, and they're already underwater before they can even get to the next week. I talked to a mother this week who said to me she has to work a full-time job, pick up her kids, then put them in a car, drive around for another 6 and 8 hours with small kids under the age of 5 because she cannot afford the standard of living that she had before all of these green new policies were pushed on them. She barely gets 3 hours of sleep, and this is not an unusual statement. Everybody is feeling the burden of high energy prices, high food costs. Nobody feels like they're getting ahead. Everybody has depleted their savings, they're underwater in debt from credit cards, and they still feel like nobody's listening to them. My think tank is a conservative think tank, but 90% of the phone calls I get are from liberals asking me for help because they're hurting. And it seems like no policy is great enough in terms of saving the planet that doesn't hurt working class families. So all of the burden is being carried by low income and middle class families.
Sounds like a disconnect to me from what I'm hearing from some of my colleagues.
Ms. Jackson, much of your work is focused on debunking the faulty narratives that the Harris-Biden administration's extreme green energy policies are benefiting working and middle-class families. How would closing a major pipeline like Line 5 in favor of green agenda impact the working and middle-class folks of Michigan's Upper Peninsula?
Everything they're doing right now is a regressive tax against the poor and middle-class families because we have to pay a higher percentage of our income towards more expensive goods and services because of the shortage of affordable fuel. You know, I've heard a lot about these jobs that are supposed to be created. These are make-work jobs, and even the Washington Post said that the green energy jobs would only replace 20% of the coal jobs. We're losing tons of jobs that the middle class and the poor have historically been able to take advantage of in manufacturing and industrial jobs. That's what built the middle class in this country, especially among Black Americans. that most of minorities are priced out of the EV market. They just don't make sense. And when you think about Black Americans that have a median income of $56,000 a year, which is someone doing well, the average demographic of an EV owner makes $100,000 or more, has owned their own home, and they're white and they're educated. So most African Americans and most minorities are already priced out of the market. They can't even afford a electric vehicle.
Right.
And so the alternatives that they're providing for us is public transportation, which does not work when you need a job.
Well, I will point out, I don't think for the billionaire class that I think runs the Democrat Party, public transportation is not a big deal there. And like so many things, be it your electric bill, be it your car payment on your new car, if you're a billionaire, you don't even make those payments yourself. Probably have an accountant do it for you. So, but you're right. I think it's so damaging for the average person. Of course, the cost of a car isn't just initially what you pay for it. I wasn't aware until I talked the other way. When you do want to buy a new car and you trade in your old car, is it right that the trade-in you're going to get on an electric car is less than you get on a combustion engine car? Is that another way they're going to try to nail the middle class?
And the trade-ins are in comparison to gas combustion engines, are way lower. But what they're also doing is increasing the cost of gas-powered cars because they're forcing the EV agenda on individuals. So now the middle class is getting hit in two ways. They're actually being priced out of the private car ownership market.
Right. There's another cost to a car that we haven't talked about today. I think maybe you ought to talk about it a little bit, and that is the cost of insurance. I know in Wisconsin, almost every other state, you're required to have insurance if you're going to have a car. What is the plan for middle America when they begin to have to buy insurance on their new EV? What is that going to do to the middle class there?
Yeah, well, it's probably likely to be much greater because if the battery goes in an EV, that means it's a very large expense to replace it. And that's why you can't sell used EVs. People don't want to take the risk of a battery going. And about 71% of car sales in the United States are used. Most people buy used cars, and they don't want to buy used EVs. So that really messes with the market.
Well, right, and isn't it true that if you get into a car accident, it's much more expensive to repair the EV?
And they can also catch fire. It's much easier for these EVs to catch fire.
Right, and the result will be that's a payment that I think a lot of people in America make monthly on insurance. That's another way you work towards this plan of getting rid of the middle class, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I did the calculation this morning. An EV would cost about $1,400 a month for a minority who's usually in the subprime loan market. If you're making $56,000, basically your income for a month is $3,000. You're talking about somebody who needs to invest half of their income.
Yeah, I just want to get in one.